Welcome to the Tao of Sports podcast with Troy Kirby, covering sports business with over 300 industry leaders from across the globe. Now, here is your host, Troy Kirby.
Well, thank you for listening to the Tao of Sports podcast. I'm Troy Kirby with episode 880. It's going to be Matt Slatus, president and GM of Camelback Ranch. Now, I love Camelback Ranch. Aside from Talking Stick, which is the other Cactus League stadium that I really enjoy, Camelback Ranch does a great job with what it has, simply for the experience outside of the stadium. You get that kind of Dodger Town by the lake experience where the kids are, playing baseball with, instructors, and there's really players everywhere. I just think it's a great atmosphere, a great thing in Glendale. Have had a lot of fun over the years with Matt. When I got to first know Matt, we had that conversation, and then I actually went out, and this was about 2014, and went out to each stadium in the Cactus League and looked at their luxury suites. And I actually put this in the Association of Luxury Suite Directors Seat Magazine, and we did that, and it was great back then, and I've kept a good relationship with him. Now, Matt, in between that time that I've talked to him, actually went down to the ballpark at the Palm Beaches. That's the Houston Astros and Washington Nationals in Florida, and, did some stuff as their general manager, and now is back as the president of Camelback Ranch, which I think is always great because you see that growth. Great conversation with Matt Slatus right here in episode 880 of the Tao of Sports. Been a few years since I've been out here to Camelback Ranch. The last time I was out here, I was doing something for ALSD. We were doing something on luxury suites, and up in the top was Tommy Lasorda. He popped out his head, right? We saw him down below. But it had been a few years. Tommy's been gone. But that legacy of the Dodgers and the White Sox and just that kind of classic nature of Camelback Ranch, I think is what makes the mystique of this ballpark and of this facility a lot different than even, maybe Salt River Fields kind of has it close with what some of the stuff it does, but of spring training homes, it's kind of one of the best.
Well, Troy, I appreciate the kind words. Selfishly, I agree with you 100%. It is definitely one of the best. Salt River Fields is a beautiful, beautiful facility. Ironically, the same architect that designed Camelback Ranch also designed Salt River Fields about a year later. So there are a lot of similarities there, and I would argue that if we have some inefficiencies, the architect probably figured it out by the time he built Salt River Fields. The biggest point of differentiation, though, is you mentioned the Rockies and you mentioned the Diamondbacks. You've got clubs with history dating back to 1994 and 1998. When you look at the history and the tradition of the Los Angeles Dodgers and the Chicago White Sox, we're talking, well over 200 years of history and tradition. And one of our goals here is to really draw that history and tradition into a connection with the fans, to make sure that their spring training journey, let's call it, is connected to white and blue, is connected to black and white. And I think, to your point, that's where we're really able to differentiate here at Camelback Ranch, the experience that our fans have compared to any of the 9 other ballparks in the Phoenix Valley.
And when, I came here, the first thing I mentioned was that Dodger Town in the back that has nothing to do with the actual game on the thing or anything, but you get to watch little kids in uniforms and, the adults showing them how to play, and it's next to a lake setting. That doesn't seem like the spring training that you would normally get if you were in, somewhere else, right? You'd just go, oh, we're going to a spring training game. Here you've got that constant of this idea that it's more than a game.
It really harks back to old-time baseball, old-time spring training. But instead of playing in a rickety wooden ballpark, we're playing in a 12,000, 13,000 seat, fantastically beautiful stadium. So we open our gates here before a 1 o'clock game. We open them at 9 a.m. every single day, or 2 p.m. before a 6 o'clock game. You don't need a ticket to get in. It's completely free of charge. And fans have access to come watch the Dodgers and the White Sox train. And when I say the Dodgers and the White Sox, we're talking about the Luis Robert Jr.'s of the White Sox world, the Shohei Ohtanis of the Dodgers world, but not just those guys. We're also talking about almost 200 minor league players for each team. So if you're a true fan of the Dodgers or the White Sox, you have the opportunity to come out here at 9 o'clock in the morning, watch an 18-year-old warm up, an 18-year-old who you might see playing for the Great Lakes Loons in the Dodger system come opening day, and then walk 100 yards down the pathway and see Shohei Ohtani or see Mookie Betts or see Freddie Freeman. You don't need a ticket. Players and fans walk the same pathways. There's only a small rope line separating the two, and it really is the last vestige of old-time baseball. Fans can come out with a ball. They can come out with a ballpoint pen, come and get autographs, and just enjoy the day, and then follow it up with the 1 o'clock game in the stadium.
That was one thing I had mentioned. I was down the flight down. I was a mother and her son, and he was probably like 11. And I told her, you should go and get as many baseballs as possible, UPS them back, because you're going to be able to get those signatures. That really is the constant that spring training has, whether or not it's a new facility or an old facility. Some of the older ones, maybe they're Peoria or whatever, but they're really built around the idea that, there's this connection that you're not going to get. And I hate to say you're not going to get, but when you get to the major league ballparks and you get to the season, it's a little harder to get those autographs.
It is, and some of it is just design when you're talking about a 50,000-seat stadium versus a 12,000-seat stadium. But let's remember that those games count. And just like you and I, Troy, have jobs to do, when players are playing in those games, their guard is up. They have a job to do, and that job is to win every pitch and win the game and ultimately win the World Series. There's a little bit more leeway here as guys prep and get ready for the regular season. And I talk a lot about spring training, being about first impressions. It's first impressions for the players. When they arrive here, what type of facility do they have? We just built a new north of $10 million baseball innovation lab for Dodger players. It's first impressions for the media. This year we've got media coming in from all over the world to see Yoshinobu Yamamoto and Shohei Ohtani in their Dodger blue for the first time. It's first impressions for the coaching staff and the front office. It's first impressions, obviously, for the fans. And I think players don't want to let fans down. They don't want to let the media down. They don't want to let the front office down. So you launch the season every year in front of fans. And because these games don't count, because so much of what we do here is about preparation and being ready for day one of the regular season, there is a little more access for fans. There is a little more time for guys to stop and sign autographs. Guys don't play in every game every single day. They might come in and get medical treatment, work out for an hour or two, sign some autographs, and head home. So it's a different feeling for the players. It's a different feeling for the media. And all of that translates into a unique set of circumstances and opportunities for the fans.
Well, we would normally go, okay, spring training, it's always going to happen, and everything else didn't happen. And that, in a way, does that not correct any kind of, I wouldn't say flaws, but anything that you maybe weren't doing that you didn't have time to, and now you go, okay, now we have to implement this extra stuff because we have some time to now kind of look around and go, wow, because it's really not returned since last year, right? This is really the growth year.
This is really the growth year, but I don't know if we can talk about the growth year without talking about 2020. Before COVID hitting, spring training was the sport that was playing. Obviously, you had the NHL, you had the NBA, but we were midway through our season. Before I came back to Camelback Ranch in 2021, I had the same position I have now, running the Ballpark of the Palm Beaches in Florida for the Houston Astros and the Washington Nationals. And I remember March 12th, 2020 so vividly. The Nationals were home that day. They were hosting the New York Yankees. The ballpark was sold out. And just a few minutes before first pitch, it came out that the commissioner was saying, today's the last day of spring training. We're going to pause for 2 weeks, let everybody wrap their mind around COVID, understand how we work with this thing. Well, it was a lot longer than 2 weeks. There was no greater feeling in the world than seeing Major League Baseball come back that summer in July, play without fans, and ultimately see the Dodgers crowned World Series champions. But changed the way we operated. It changed the way society operated, and baseball is just a small part of society. So while we were trying to make changes on the fly to operate minor league camp, to operate, I think it was called summer camp just before the start of the regular season in July, we were doing that within the confines of everything that was going on within the world. So it really did take baseball 2021, 2022, or 2020 and 2021 rather, to 2022 before there was any semblance of normalcy. And I think we all know there was a short lockout that hampered spring training in 2022. Ended up being a fantastic regular season. 2023 was a great year. But it feels like, to me at least, that the momentum behind spring training, the momentum behind the start of the regular season has really returned now in 2024 to what it was long prior to 2020.
You mentioned the fact that you worked in the Grapefruit League. You've had experience in both. The fact that, and it's not against anything with the Grapefruit League, but they are so far stretched out compared to the fact that I can go to a 1 p.m. game and then go to a 6 p.m. game in the Cactus League. They're all connected. Nothing against Tucson, but I think it went way too far down. It made that impossible. Now that they're all basically connected, has that changed the brand to where Cactus League is almost its own entity in its own sense, because you're really just getting the tourists for every single thing. So they might not be Dodger White Sox fans, but they might just be baseball fans.
I tell everybody I know, and I love to evangelize spring training baseball. I tell everybody, though, that the Cactus League is the Disneyland of baseball. You hit the nail on the head, Troy, when you said you could see 2 games a day. You can see 2 games a day, most likely 7 days a week. So we've got 10 ballparks in the Cactus League, no further than about 35 minutes from each other. Where I'm sitting in my office with you at Camelback Ranch, I could be to the Peoria Sports Complex, home of the Seattle Mariners and San Diego Padres, in about 10 minutes. I could be to Goodyear Ballpark, home of the Cincinnati Reds and Cleveland Guardians, in about 15 minutes. I could be at Surprise Stadium, home of the World Series champion Texas Rangers and Kansas City Royals, in about 15 minutes. And then even to the other side of town to see the Angels, the Giants, the A's, the Diamondbacks, the Rockies. We're only talking 30, 35 minutes at the very most, and our friends the Brewers are right down the street here. So we've created, and baseball's created, working with the state of Arizona, and the Office of Tourism, really an opportunity for fans to come into town and see their team 7 days a week. You can see the Dodgers at Camelback Ranch. You can see them the next day on the road. And as someone who oversees a facility here, I will tell you that the visiting team is very important to us. We love that when we play the Seattle Mariners fans come out to the ballpark. We love that the Dodgers-Giants rivalry from home extends to Camelback Ranch because fans come to the ballpark. Same thing goes for that Windy City showdown. We've got the Cubs and the White Sox, and we know Cubs fans are coming over here, and we feel that energy. And that all translates into about $900 million a year in economic impact for the state of Arizona. And to put that $900 million in economic impact into perspective, that's nearly a Super Bowl. And it happens year after year after year. So it's wonderful that we have the Final Four here in a few weeks. But that comes around once every decade or so. Spring training is here. It's ingrained in a part of the community, and it impacts every hotelier, restaurateur, every business owner in the valley.
The thing is, this last fall, winter, you mentioned your free agent impacts. That's not just free agent impacts like a Freddie Freeman, or even, hey, we re-signed Clayton Kershaw. This is a monumental step. I mean, normally, okay, so if I were to look back, Hideo Nomo had somewhat of an impact with the Japanese media. He was a sensation in the 90s, but Ichiro changed things for the Seattle Mariners. Now you got 2 Ichiros. And I'm talking an entire country, an entire region. How do you deal with that type of impact when it comes out? Because they're not here to see anything else, or are they? Is it something that it blends them into, they came here for this, but they're off days and now they're going somewhere else?
We'll have more data officially come the end of the season. But anecdotally, I will say it's not just the fans, it's also the media. You walk into a hotel at Westgate, which is the entertainment complex, mixed-use development down the street, and the lobbies are full of international media. You walk outside our facility 2 hours before it opens, and the parking lot is full of international media. I would say that from what a normal spring training game looked like prior to these free agents coming to the Dodgers to what it looks like today has been a seismic shift. We're seeing fans purchase tickets from all over the world, obviously Japan in particular. We're seeing media 5 times fold, be on site every day compared to what it was prior to these acquisitions. So it has been a big change. I don't think there was any reason for the entire nation of Glendale or the entire nation of Japan to know where Glendale, Arizona was prior to this, but they certainly do now. And for the Dodgers, for the brand, it's really given them global reach. I love that we can talk about the Dodgers being the favorite team of an entire nation. It helps what we do here, and obviously it helps the club grow overseas.
What's remarkable about this is you're really the petri dish for this entire aspect of not just signing these types of free agents, but how to handle it. What was the volume like comparatively when all of a sudden that comes through? Because now you almost need to have, you mentioned tourism bodies, but now you have to have a tourism body that can handle in a whole different language, has to be prepared, and has to know what they're going to do on their off days.
Yeah, we've seen obviously an influx of ticket buyers. But I'll tell you, the Dodgers always bring a crowd. So we're well prepared here. We're well staffed to have 12,500 people at all of our games. Let's not forget the White Sox are from one of the 3 largest markets in America as well and draw well. So for us, it was just making sure we were buttoned up and ready to go. Spring training has become big business. We still have the intimacy of the backfields and the autographs. But we have a staff that's large enough to support the influx of tourism. And, here we are about 40% of the way through the season, and it's been a great year so far. So for me, it's pure glee and excitement looking out my windows every day and seeing these guys here because it's great for the game of baseball locally, and it's great for baseball on a global level. But we're prepared and ready to roll through the rest of spring training.
When you talk about the snowbirds that are coming down from Chicago or everything, I always think Sinatra. I always think that kind of, really old school. I know some people associate that with New York, but really, Chicago. They're a different blend of fans, but they complement well with the Dodger fans. How do you make sure that one brand doesn't overwhelm the other when you're trying to sell to both?
Yeah, the game experience is one area where I think the uniqueness of each brand really sticks out. So there might be a little bit more Sinatra music playing during White Sox games. Very different playlist for Dodgers games. But we try to extend a lot of what takes place at Guaranteed Rate Field or what takes place at Dodger Stadium here so fans feel that connection to the history and to the tradition. Fans who want to walk the backfields prior to the game, when they go over to White Sox Field number 1, it's got the exact same field dimensions as far as fencing as they do have in Chicago. It also has the iconic scoreboard with the pinwheels on it. When you walk over to Dodgers Field number 1, it's got the iconic blue scoreboard, and that field mimics the dimensions of Dodger Stadium. Inside the ballpark, we do as much as we can with digital technology to change the game experience. These teams both have so much history, so much tradition that follow them, that it's really not tough to draw that connection for their fans and make sure that each experience, be it Dodgers or White Sox, is different from the other.
So you mentioned the pandemic, of course. Did you throw out the playbook a little bit and change up things and, kind of make some market corrections and how you not only priced, but how you sold, how you did things?
I think we did. And I've always felt that sports is a beg, borrow, and steal industry, and that's the best compliment we can give our colleagues. So during the 2020 year and heading into 2021, I spoke to my counterparts at darn near all 30 major league clubs, trying to get an understanding of how we were going to operate the ballpark, how we were going to price things, because at the end of the day, we were only selling 2,500 to 3,000 seats, depending on the sizes of our venues, and we still wanted to maintain the pricing that has long been associated with spring training. So it was challenging to say the least, but I think most ballparks at that point, for health and safety reasons, went to a cashless model. I think that's continued to this day. So Camelback Ranch no longer accepts cash at any points of sale. We're completely digital, completely touchless. Same thing with ticketing. So we now use the MLB Ballpark app for 100% of our ticket deliveries, unless you walk up to the window and purchase at the box office. I think I see a time, though, in the near future where even at the box office, we're going to probably get your phone number and text you your tickets. So there's changes like that have gone on. I think the way we clean changed and has continued to remain that way with electrostatic sprayers, with more, I would call it a heightened sense of what's necessary. We all learned a lot, and shame on us if we are now out of this pandemic and taking all those techniques and kicking them down the road behind us. For as challenging as it was, there are things that came out of that pandemic that made us better. So you had asked about sales and pricing. This ballpark is, ticket-wise, 100% dynamically priced. So we price based on market factors. We price based on supply and demand. That started right after COVID and has continued to the day. We still broadcast every single game, and that was even more important during the COVID period where not as many fans had access to the ballpark. So all of our Dodger games are broadcast on Sportsnet, Spectrum Sportsnet in Southern California. They're all available on MLB TV. MLB Network picks up a good number of games as well nationally. White Sox games are broadcast on NBC Sports in Chicago or webcast to MLB TV. So we're giving fans access to the product either in the ballpark or at home on one of their devices. And I think that's a direct benefit of what went on during COVID and the necessity to deliver baseball in other ways.
So, great, we're done with spring training. Your job must be over. You don't even have to do anything for the rest of the facility. We know that's not true. How do you make sure that this facility is still generating revenue? Are you still doing the fantasy drafts that are up in the luxury suites? Are you still doing the other extra little things, or what's changed in that model?
We still host fantasy camp. We still host events here. One of my favorite events, most unique event, is a 6-day endurance run that runs between Christmas Day and just after the first of the year. We had about 700 runners for this event, and our facility sits on 145 acres. I know you've seen it, but for the listeners, you have to imagine a 5-acre lake in the middle of the venue, miles and miles of dirt, walking and running trails. So these folks actually come in. They come in from all over the world, and they will run here 24/7, nonstop for 6 days. So the gentleman who won last year, I know he was here from Greece, and he did 642 miles in just under 7 days. I have not run 642 miles in the last calendar year.
I haven't walked that.
That's because you don't work here.
Yeah.
We certainly get our steps in here. That's just one example of a unique event. Because the facility lends itself to runs, we host Rugged Maniac here every year. It's kind of like a Tough Mudder or a Warrior Dash. We host that twice a year. With our proximity to State Farm Stadium being about 2 miles down the road, we hosted all of ESPN's pregame Super Bowl hospitality here. We've done that in each of the last 2 Super Bowls. We'll have an opportunity here to host a Final Four event. We park all of the Arizona Cardinals game day staff parking here and then shuttle them over to State Farm Stadium, running a bus service for them virtually 18 hours a day on game days. So there's always something going on. And then on top of all of that, your 25 major league guys and their coaching staff leave here come April 1 to start the regular season, but we still keep, between the 2 clubs, probably 100 to 120 minor league players here. We still have coaching staffs. We still have baseball operations staffs here, training staff, medical staff, you name it. There's professional baseball here 12 months a year on some level. We do most of the club's injury rehab here, particularly for minor league players. A lot of major league injury rehab for the Dodgers, just given our proximity to Los Angeles. And it's not just that we're hosting baseball. It's that these baseball players are getting fed breakfast every day. They're getting lunch every day. They're getting here at 6 a.m. and leaving at 4 in the afternoon. So there's not a lot of downtime. it certainly changes. The rhythm of this complex changes from having 12 or 13,000 people here every day to having a couple hundred. The media trucks pull away. The ballpark doesn't smell like hot dogs anymore, but it's still in use, and it's still humming along almost every day of the year.
Does that mean that it takes a different mindset to work? And I'm not saying that you're special compared to other spring training homes, but do you have to kind of get a different mindset in how you actually operate, because you're not really just a baseball park? You're almost like a conference center. You're flipping the thing every other day, right?
We are, and we are probably hosting, between the two teams and some of their minor league games, the Arizona Fall League, spring training, and our events here. We're probably hosting north of 200 event days a year. At the same time, I tell our new staff, you got to buckle up for a very long off season, because if you think of this as being your job in professional sports, well, we've got Major League Sports here for 45 days, and then we have things without a lot of eyeballs. So you have to be prepared. I think that to work in spring training baseball in particular, you have to be self-motivated, because you're making sales calls as a staff come June and July for games that we won't even play until March. We're selling the following year while the regular season is still going on, and it puts you in a very weird schism. You're talking about 2025. The White Sox and the Dodgers are playing 2024. I think there's one school of thought that says you really shouldn't talk about the following year until after the World Series, until after your club season is done. But there's so much that has to go on. There are hundreds of thousands of seats that have to be sold. There's millions of dollars in sponsorships that have to be sold. There's broadcast plans that have to be made. So I would say we are always a bit ahead of the curve when you compare it to a front office that serves regular season baseball. But it's a long off season, and you have to really be ready to work through the 110-degree Arizona weather and show up at the ballpark every day and bring your A game.
Is that maybe the future of spring training, especially for Cactus League, that you're getting more on a membership model, but not just a membership of you, a membership with all of the interconnected ballparks, to where and you're trying to get them to not only show up, but fly down or drive down or whatever. And it takes a long-term view as opposed to I'm just insular to what I've had, because it's going to change, right?
We talk a lot as 10 facilities out here. We also work a lot with the Arizona Office of Tourism. We discuss with the state, when spring training really needs the most marketing help, when some of the state's marketing efforts can be most impactful. Usually that becomes the first half of spring training when there's potential for still cool weather here. We work with Visit Grand Canyon, and we work with all of these places to make sure that while we're out there selling the Dodgers and the White Sox product, we make our fans aware of all the other products that the state and the Cactus League has to offer. I think that there's a lot of different operational models in spring training, particularly in Arizona. Some of these ballparks are run by municipalities. Some of them are run by Native American tribes. Some of them are run by the teams themselves. And we all have slightly different goals, but at the end of the day, everyone's pulling in the same direction to bring as many baseball and non-baseball fans to the state of Arizona for 45 days in February and March.
Well, and you're the reason that Ohtani signed, right? I mean, right? So he got you a car too?
Oh, for me personally? Yeah. I'm still.
You made the call?
I'm still waiting on the car, but I guess he hasn't left yet, so you never know.
Yeah. Well, isn't that part of it is that people view that like somehow you're either directly in on the team's viewpoint, but that you had a say in who came and who went?
I've worked in professional baseball now for 22 years. Half of my friends and family probably think I brought Ohtani here. The other half of my family thinks I'm probably George Costanza. So I don't think anybody actually knows what I do, but I am incredibly lucky to do what I do, I'll tell you that.
Hey, George Costanza was the reason that they went from, was it polyester to cotton? And he was a great assistant GM of travel.
Exactly, the assistant to the traveling secretary. And there was a time in my career where I thought maybe that's what I wanted to do. Fortunately, though, it's played out in a very different direction.
We're laughing about this, but we had been talking off about really sports education and some of the aspects that come from it Are we seeing a changing trend, or do we still have to see a changing trend of people that are coming out that maybe have expectations that cannot be met because they're unrealistic? They're thinking dioramas and things are going to make the difference when a lot of times that's not really the case.
I think that much like the industry, the sports academic industry is constantly evolving, and there's very good programs out there, and there's average programs out there, and there are programs out there that might not be so hot. But then I think just a lot of the onus falls on the students, and the more kids can do to get themselves real life opportunity, regardless of the university they attend, they need to be doing that. And that could be internships, it could be volunteer opportunities, it could be part-time work. I think that the most challenging thing as a hiring manager is seeing somebody out of college come out with a sports management or sports business degree and no prior job experience. It becomes even more challenging when right away they tell you they want to be a general manager. I think we've seen a shift in professional baseball where many of these general managers did not play Major League or even minor league baseball. So it's absolutely doable, but I think these universities need to load these kids up with knowledge, point them towards experience, and let them know of the uphill battle they're facing. You know, there are roughly 130, 140 major league organizations in this country. That means there's a very finite number of jobs. There are a lot of people that want to do them.
Maybe 50 to 20. Right? There's not that many.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot for doing it with numbers.
Well, you look at all the leagues. You look at the 4 leagues. One thing I always encourage people to do is don't pump up minor league sports. I actually taught and designed a class at Towson University called The Business of Minor League Sports. And I felt like I needed to go there. I needed to put that effort forward because there are thousands of jobs available through minor league organizations. And I'll tell you that many of the best people I've ever hired have come from minor league baseball or have come from the G League or the AHL. And it's because they've worn so many hats. You know, I had a guy tell me one day he sold his biggest sponsorship. He also wore a crab suit and was chased by a guy with a mallet around the field all in the same day. You know, we want in sports people to be well-versed and have a strong background. And I was very fortunate. I went to NYU. I got a great education. I did my master's at Ohio University. But the books only take me so far in my career.
And the minor league baseball part of it, they have the best benefits. I mean, I'm sorry, but they literally have the best health and medical or whatever you want benefits of anything. Like they've really, because they're smaller organizations that really, it's mom and pop in some ways, but it's also big time in other ways.
Yeah, I think that there's some good organizations, much like academia, with great benefits and great pay, and there's some organizations that are maybe in it for the right reasons, but just barely hanging on. It takes a special person to work 81 baseball games. It takes a even more special person to work 70 or 80 baseball games, pull the tarp 3 times a day, come in at 6 a.m. to get the tarp off the field, wear a mascot suit, sell a sponsorship, sell tickets, get involved in the community. You know, they're doing with a staff of, call it 5 to 50, what major league organizations do with a staff of 200 to 500. That creates a very special kind of person. And I think folks who work in minor league sports do it for a year and get out, or they do it for a career. And those folks are just as talented as anybody working at the major league level. And I think academia would be well served to make sure that young kids in school have an understanding that there's nothing wrong with the minor leagues. In fact, that's the grassroots level of what keeps professional sports humming along so well in this country. And it is a great opportunity that shouldn't be ignored.
Well, fantastic stuff, Matt. Thank you very much for coming back on the podcast. Been a while, but, you know, I always enjoy Camelback Ranch. I always enjoy the Cactus League. But just to be at a facility that understands there's got to be more in spring training than just spring training, I think is a testament to what you've been doing here.
Well, thanks, Troy. It's great to see you again and great to chat spring training baseball.
Thank you for listening to the Tao of Sports podcast, focusing on the world of sports business. Download our free iPhone, iPad app in the iTunes App Store, an Android app available in Amazon to listen to the entire archive. Or check out sportsdow.com for more podcasts, blog posts, and videos. All episodes of the Tao of Sports podcast are copyrighted and trademarked.